Good evening and welcome to the Monday, January 13th, 2025 special meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, we have a quorum with all council members present, and we do have a vacant seat on the City Council, which is why you only see 6 of us present this evening. And so that is our purpose for gathering here this evening for a special meeting, is to conduct interviews to fill the City Council vacancy for position number 5, which was formerly held by Councilmember Lisa Parsley, who has now been elected to the State House of Representatives and was just sworn in earlier today. So our first business item this evening is an overview of the ranked choice voting process for the purpose of appointing a council member to fill the unexpired term of position number 5. And presenting this evening is Jack Mongan, the election technician for Thurston County Auditor's Office. But first, we're going to have our Strategic Communications Director, Kelly Purse-Brassett, kick us off this evening. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Payne, council members. For the record, my name is Kelly Purse-Brassett. I'm the Strategic Communications Director. As you know, the council has decided to use ranked choice voting as part of your process for appointing a new council member. Tonight, you'll receive an overview of ranked choice voting to support your use of the process to determine a candidate to fill council position number 5. I'm very grateful to Thurston County Auditor Mary Hall for her support of our efforts to make this possible. The Auditor's Office oversaw the ranked choice voting process for the council appointment process in 2021 and again in 2024. And tonight, the council is again in the very capable hands of election technician Jack Mongan from the Auditor's Office, who will go over ranked choice voting with you now and will administer the process when you vote. I'm going to turn it over to Jack for the overview. Thank you, and I'll stand by for button pushing.
All right, thank you. Hello. My name is Jack, and I'm an elections technician, as everybody said, with Thurston County Elections, but I'm here, and I'd like to thank Mayor Payne, the council members, and city staff for inviting me here today to do this. I really look forward to it. I'm here to administer the election to fill Representative Parsley's seat, and I think it's a great idea that her replacement will be selected with this open and transparent process of using ranked choice voting. To briefly explain the system, we're going to play a short video covering those basics, and after that I'll go into more of the details of what we'll be going through tonight.
Pick your favorite color. The ranked choice voting way. Instead of voting for just one color, you get to rank your top 3.
Well, purple is the best, but if I can't have purple, I want blue. And if neither of those wins, I guess I can live with orange.
Now, let's count up everybody's votes.
Under ranked choice voting rules, it's not enough just to get the most votes. You need a majority.
More than 50% of the votes.
Purple's ahead, but it has only 7 votes.
It needs at least 11 to win.
So we eliminate the color in last place.
Sorry, Orange fans, we're going to your second choice.
2 more for green.
1 for purple.
But no color has 11 votes yet.
Still no majority.
Bye-bye,
blue.
1 more for purple.
4 for green.
And we have a winner.
The ranked choice voting way.
All right, thank you. So, after all the interviews are conducted, I'm going to distribute a ballot to each of you. You're going to write your name on the ballot. There's no secret ballot here. After you write your name, I'm going to ask you to rank the candidates from 1 to 7, where 1 is your most preferred candidate. And all candidates do have to be ranked for this. Once all members have voted and they've given their ballots back to me, I'm going to record all of their votes in this tabulation spreadsheet I have that I will be putting up on the screen. I'm going to confirm that I have all the results in there correctly, and then I'm going to move on to tabulating the results. So first, we're going to count everybody's preferred candidate. And if one candidate receives a majority, we don't even have to go through any rounds of voting. That's that. But if there isn't a majority, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the candidate that received the least votes, and we're going to remove them from an election, and whoever voted for that candidate, we're going to be looking at their second preference. and counting the votes that way. We're going to go through that process and until either a candidate receives a majority vote or a tie is reached. If a tie is reached, we're going to use a tie-breaking process. How this happens is that each candidate is going to have a tiebreaker ranking. So the way this works is, for instance, the first candidate we see here, Daniel Garcia, once we have everybody's vote, there will be a total over here on the right-hand side. That's going to be the combined totals of how everybody preferred that candidate. It's kind of like golf. The lower your ranking is, the more people preferred you. So if there ever is a tie, we're going to be using this number, this tie-breaking ranking, to see who we're going to eliminate. So if there was a tie, the candidate that had the higher ranking would be eliminated. Now, we're continuing the process of even basically, if there's a tie, breaking it that way, working our way down until one candidate has a majority. So this is the way that this election will be decided. Is there any questions or clarification I can answer before we move on?
Seeing none, but I'm
Okay.
pretty sure we all have deja vu because we just did this 1 year ago when we appointed Councilmember Vanderpool.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I look forward to running this election for you.
All right, well, thank you very much, Jack. So we are going to move on in our agenda to item 2B, which is the interview for the candidates, conduct a rate choice voting process, and appoint a new council member to fill the unexpired term for position number 5. But before we do that, we're going to move in your council packets. You should have the questions in front of you for each candidate that we're going to be interviewing this evening. The subcommittee for the appointment process that was put together have the questions that they recommend to the full council for us to consider this evening to ask of our candidates. And so I will just ask for all of us, hopefully we've all reviewed them ahead of time. And if you have any questions or comments on the questions, now is your time to do so. Sure. Mayor Pro Tem just asked me about an order of the questions as well, so that's up for consideration if anyone has a particular order. I will say that we will start, we do have 7 candidates. We have 2 panels, a blue panel and an orange panel. The blue panel consists of 4 candidates, and then the orange panel consists of 3. We will take turns asking each of the candidate who answers the question first, so that way it's not the same person asking a question the first time, each time a question's asked. Any additional questions or comments on the questions in front of us?
Do you want to establish the order?
Yes, we can establish an order if we have a preference. Any particular order, desire for a particular order, in order of what we see in front of us? Okay. All right, so why don't we go ahead and assign the questions. Is there a particular question? Yes, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. I was just curious if you want to ask an opener as well, like, please introduce yourself and tell us why you're the best person for this job? Or are you just going to dive into the topic specific?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, yeah, let's start there. It's important for us to kind of do that before we just jump right in. So we'll start there. Thanks for the suggestion. Any others? Councilmember Madron.
So is that the question we want to ask for the opener?
I think it's not necessarily a formal question. I see it as for the purposes of facilitating the meeting, that it's really kind of just an icebreaker.
Yeah.
Before we move into the questions that we're agreeing to.
But we'll want to make sure everyone's asked the same question
Oh,
the same way each
absolutely.
time.
Yeah,
So-
and I
so-
will handle that, so.
Oh,
yes.
you're going to do that
Yeah.
one?
Mhm.
Great.
Okay. Okay. So are we comfortable just going down the line in order, starting with Councilmember Cooper, ending with Councilmember Madrone? Okay. Okay. So, and I suppose that I could take the closing question, because that's the 7th, so I'll open it for each candidate and then close it for each candidate. But I also have a question somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Yes. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and go down the line. Okay. And I do believe we've allotted 2 minutes for each candidate to respond to each of the questions. Is that box gonna be working? Okay, perfect, all right. So we'll just go ahead and have that up for the candidates. Thank you, Councilmember Cooper. And then we will have the first panel come in, and then we'll have staff escort them back to a holding area where we have all of our candidates right now. I do just want to state that the second panel, it will be monitored in the holding room. They won't have access to viewing the meeting. This is a public meeting. They won't have access to watching the meeting from a device or something like that, because they would have the questions in advance, and that would not be fair. So in order to make it fair, we're making sure that the candidates do not have any view of the meeting ahead of time. So with that, are there any additional questions before we move to adopt? Okay. So with that, I need a motion to approve the questions as recommended by the subcommittee for the council appointment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Yes, Councilmember Cooper.
And just to think ahead a little bit, just in case, how do you want to handle follow-ups? That, like, after the whole panel has answered the question, or not do them, just so we think ahead?
You mean in what context? A follow-up from a council member?
No, from the response, like if you want further follow-up in the response from the candidate.
Sure. Well, let's do it. Let's do it immediately after. I'm not sure it would make sense to have them circle back. Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Madrone.
I'm not sure that we should do a follow-up, because unless we follow up with everybody in the same way, like it's hard to do that equitably among all people, and give everybody the same amount of airtime. And yeah, I'd say that probably people just get the 2 minutes to answer the question.
Sure, that's why I was asking
Yeah.
a clarifying question, if they request to follow up to provide additional details, or if we're doing that. My understanding is that you were asking about the candidate's ability to do that.
I was asking if I could follow up on part of a response during the question.
No.
And I asked it the way I did because I could go either way.
Okay.
And I think Councilmember Madrone
No.
made a good suggestion.
So we're not going to do that because we just moved to adopt a specific set of questions which are in front of us. So to the point that Councilmember Madrone just made, we're going to keep it simple that way. All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being here. All right. So welcome. First thing I just want to tell you all, I want you to take a deep breath if you haven't already. Just relax. Think of this as a conversation. I know it's intimidating. I've been where you are, and I know that this is a bit stressful, but I just want you to take a deep breath and just, we're all community members and we're having a conversation. Thank you for being willing to apply and show up to interview for this seat. It's very admirable that you're willing to step up and serve the community in this capacity. These are difficult jobs that we have, and so to know that we have community members that are willing to do it and step forward is great. We really appreciate it. So with that, we're going to get started. I do just want to make sure that if you have questions for us, that you know that you certainly can ask that at the conclusion of our time with you before we send you back to the holding area this evening. So with that, our first question will go to Daniel Garcia. But before we do, I do just want to please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've applied for the council position, and then we'll go ahead and get started with our first question. Yes.
Daniel's looking for clarification.
Yes. Oh, yes, I should explain this. And actually, before we do that, why don't you go ahead and each introduce yourselves as a panel? And then we can go ahead and make sure all of your mics are working while we do that. And yes, please push the button to make sure each time that you're speaking so that those who are watching can hear your responses as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Daniel Garcia.
Hi, I'm Zach Lynch.
Hi, I'm Bridget Valdez-Kogel. Good evening, I'm Tanzania Zinzali Marshall.
Thank you all again. So yes, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us why you are applying for this vacant seat, and anything else you think is relevant for you to, there is a clock also to my right, your left, indicating you have 2 minutes of time to answer each of your questions. So we'll go ahead and give you a couple minutes to introduce yourselves before we dive right in.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Daniel Garcia. I'm a recent graduate of the Evergreens MPA program, the Master of Public Administration. I did my capstone on downtown Olympia, and it really was that work that I did on looking at downtown Olympia that really inspired me to apply for this position. While doing my capstone, I really identified that there is a lot of good work that the city is doing, and I think it's a great place to live. I really love Olympia, but I don't always think that that is felt on the ground. In my capstone work, I did talk to locals and business owners and just state representatives, Representative Bateman. And while I did this, I think that there's a disconnect sometimes between the powers that be and sort of like the knowledge on the ground. And so all of that is what inspired me to be before you tonight. I think that Olympia does a lot of good work, and I hope to make more people aware of the good work that Olympia is doing. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Zach again. I am trained in substance use counseling, social work, public administration, and public health. And I really just try to find every way that I can to be involved in community, nonprofit, local government or otherwise, just because I want to serve, and I feel like that's a good use of my time. It's a good use of me acting on my values. And I really feel that community and what we have is each other, and every important thing that we do is based on that foundation. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Bridget Valdez-Kogel, and I grew up in the area on base and in Lacey. And when I was done with the Peace Corps, my husband and I decided to move to the Olympia area about 10 years ago. 11 years ago, it's been a while. And I have been a public servant my entire adult life. I worked for the state, and I served my country in the Peace Corps. And I'm currently a stay-at-home mom, but a community volunteer. I'm a Girl Scout leader, and I'm raising children in the beautiful state of Washington and city of Olympia. And we've really enjoyed exploring what there is to offer here in our community, the parks and the transit system and our libraries and the community events. And I saw this as an opportunity to serve my community and to be a leader in the community, not only for myself and my family, but for the girls that I work with and the broader community.
Hello again, I'm Tanzania Zanzali Marshall, and I am here tonight because I want to continue to grow. I am currently on the Board of Health, and that kind of was one of those, wow, I didn't know I could be a part of that. And I have learned a lot. And to be honest with you, I have a stronger understanding of county government, and I'm trying to explore and better understand city government and how we get things done and how we work with the county to actually get things done and what do those lines look like and what do those boundaries look like. So I can be fairly analytical, and I was an Army veteran, or I am an Army veteran, and I kind of have like this team kind of attitude, this teamwork, and so I would really like to be a part of the city council so that I can learn how to be a better leader in the community, and to show my children that it's possible to do that. I think that's very important, so thank you.
Well, thank you all. Before we dive right into our first question, we're going to make sure that you will each take turns answering a question for the first time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Cooper to begin with the first question.
So Zachary, or do you want to?
Zachary.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. The city's success in creating permanent supportive housing and emergency homeless services has relied upon state and federal funds. These funds are not guaranteed for the coming years. How should we continue to serve and provide housing for the most vulnerable?
Thank you. I think that I'll start with just saying that in my application I referenced what I feel like I can put better now as a need for weatherization of the city's service infrastructure and budget, considering that there might be some resources that we won't have access to in the coming years. So for that reason, I proposed a review of some data of keeping funds within the city, and not allowing, or not reviewing the rate that funds leave the city, considering that those funds stay among small business owners and then can be reallocated to public services. Reviewing the revenue that could be established from new taxes on multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations, and to really double down on our values of supporting small businesses here is one consideration to pursue that. And in terms of the structure of supportive housing and emergency homeless services, I am and have been a long proponent of supportive housing, and I conducted research among housing unstable people in Seattle and was able to hear some of those stories and subsequently attempt to propose policy. And I believe that there is a strong need for emphasis on prevention in a variety of forms, but building community cohesion, community and cultural cohesion, to ensure that folks know each other so that they can know what resources exist. And prevention can be for substance use disorder, for eviction, housing loss, and impact crime rates and public health outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And yes, please feel free to finish your sentence if the timer goes off. Go ahead, Bridget.
All right, so I believe in a housing first model because I believe in treating people with compassion and empathy, particularly when they're at their lowest lows. And I think that the city has done a really good job in providing some temporary housing in the tiny homes. Unity Commons is more permanent, but I I think that there needs to be more work done to work with faith communities to provide temporary housing. That used to be part of the city's model where there would be sort of temporary camps at churches, synagogues, and mosques. And I'm not sure why that's not part of the model right now. I'm sure that's a burden on those faith communities. They are also having challenges with budgets. I think that tapping into some of the affordable housing incentives that are part of the long-term planning of the city would be really great, because it has to account for some of the lowest low-income folks. And so providing housing for all economic levels, not just the middle class, not just lower middle class, but for the people who are really facing the most economic hardships. And I think the challenge is that we can't serve every single person who is unhoused. We have to focus on folks who are from Olympia. And so in partnership with our neighboring cities in the county, maybe we can spread some of the burden to make it an affordable, not resource, but program for the people who need our most assistance.
This is a very tough question. I recognize that there is not an easy answer to this. I will try to give the best answer that I can. So I think how I view this is that it's truly just a funding issue. This isn't a morality issue. We all want to see our houseless neighbors in homes and warm and safe and have the things that they need at a basic level. I think from a public health point of view that Olympia does an incredible job of trying to address all the social determinants of health that affect somebody that is experiencing houselessness. But it really just comes down to funding, right? So I do think that there could be some tax-related things that we explore. I do think that we are going to have to be very reasonable. And when I say reasonable, I think I might mean conservative in the way that we're spending our money right now. We all know that funding is running out in relation to anything COVID, if not already gone. And so what does that look like? It's just sort of a tough terrain. I think that currently we do have some really great programs that are in place to help us move past that in terms of the funding. So I will also maybe throw out there that interagency collaboration might be something that we want to look a little bit more into. I recognize that in terms of who we support and serve, it does have to be people in Olympia. However, interagency coordination is how we all in this county got through COVID. So really kind of leveraging the relationships that we have with Lacey and Yelm and Tumwater and just doing the best we can with them and to see what this is going to look like in terms of funding.
Yeah, I think that if we're going to deal with housing and homelessness, one of the things I've learned while serving on the city's planning commission is not only adding, but also getting out of our own way. I think it's something that we hear often on the planning commission is that we often are making processes very opaque or very complicated for people, and I don't always think that we're thinking of ways to simplify processes for people. There are definitely developers and people in our community who want to build. Olympia is a great place, and I think people want to be here. I just don't think that that's always borne out in the processes. They can be very complex, so I definitely think we could get out of our own way sometimes. And then the second thing is I think that we should definitely monitor the bills currently going through the legislative session. An esteemed member of this body, Representative now Senator Bateman, is now chair of the Housing Committee, and there's some really great bills in the Housing Committee that will be heard. And I think that there's some interesting ideas there, and I think that we should look at what's making its way through legislative session and through the Housing Committee and see how that will change the situation for housing here in our city.
All right, I have the next question, and I guess I'll give it to Bridget first. and we'll continue down the line. So this is about budget. And the question is, the city is going through a challenging budget process while continuing the work of providing the programs and services the community prioritizes while closing a significant budget gap. Describe how you would approach the budget challenge with consideration to revenues and/or reductions while balancing public expectations.
Thank you. Yes, budgets are tight all around the state and our city level. So I was watching a meeting that you had, a study session in October, and where you were talking about the budget challenges and the staff cuts that had to be made. And that there was a proposal to use some of the reserves to fund for the next year. Of course, that is a very much short-term solution because there's still going to be the same budget issues in the next year. I would say that we first have to focus on what are the things that we have to do as a city, the things that are required by law, and make sure that those are safeguarded. And then using Olympia's strong ideas and the comprehensive plan to really focus on, okay, so what are the things that we are nice to have? And then if there are things that we can cut, whether that's a certain spending or programs, I heard that things like the events were really expensive and staff intensive. If there are things that you can cut, maybe just temporarily while we figure out new revenue sources, those do need to be voted on by the people. We're not allowed to just spend all of our money without being accountable to the public. And so if there's going to be a tax increase, that has to be really thoughtfully done, especially given how tight budgets are at the household level as well. And so I think when we're thinking about revenue sources, we need to think about grants. Are there federal grants that we can access? Are there things that we can do across the region where we can maybe cut some costs for some of our recreational programs and things like that?
Another budget question. So I think it's really important that we're always investing in things that are foundational, historically foundational, and like my colleague said, things that are here, that have to be here. What are the things that we have to fund, and what are the things that we really need to fund? I think focus always needs to be on schools, and I think there's going to be new life that is breathed into supporting our public safety. That is something that we have to fund. And I think it's incredibly important, and it's not something that, good, bad, and different, I think it's incredibly important. And so with that being said, I do think working closely, especially right now with legislative session, I work for the state, I'm feeling that very strongly right now, and I think it's incredibly important to be pushing our legislators to support us in finding viable sources of funding for the city. And maybe allowing us to have some type of framework as to, okay, how do we make this work with the shortfall? What are some exploratory or collaborative ways, again, that we can safely and smartly either save money for the things that we need, or to have new money so that we can actually continue to fund the programs that we want to. But again, with that initial and primary focus of the things that we have to do.
I think that if we're going to think about budget, we definitely have to be very careful because, as we know from the legislative session, the state is also facing a very big budget shortfall. As we saw from Governor Ferguson's proposed budget, he is proposing 6% cuts for state agencies. So I don't think that we can think about relying on the state. I think that it's really going to come from us growing our own city revenues, and I really think the way to do that, at least one idea I have, is to revitalize our downtown. This, again, is an idea that comes from my MPA capstone. If we are, funded primarily through the sales tax, I think we definitely need to do more for our downtown businesses, our small businesses. Downtown Olympia is, I think, the reason why a lot of people love coming here. It's really the shops downtown. It's the coffee shops, it's the bookstores, it's the plant stores. And I really think that we need to do more to make sure that we encourage a business climate for small businesses in downtown. Again, I think people like to open businesses here. I talked to a lady who opened a small coffee shop downtown, and she was able to find a really great space. But something I sometimes hear from, for example, my barber wasn't able to find a space that was the right size for her. She was only able to find spaces that were too small or too big, and the price per square foot was just way too expensive. So I think there's a lot of people that want to do business downtown, that do business downtown, but we definitely did make that climate better for them to grow our sales tax and those small businesses and grow our budget that way.
Well, look at that. I should have read ahead. But I'll just add to my thoughts about weatherization, about just like as we consider gaps, doing our best to not increase tax burdens on citizens and small businesses, that just to increase strain and therefore feasibility could be a challenge. And I highlighted the word or the words community priorities to consider options for outreach and transparency and how to gauge those in terms of considering as much as it's balancing idealism and feasibility, asking. I'm not sure what methods to poll the public, to engage the public exist, and what sort of data exists to consider priorities during gaps. But that would be a consideration that I would be very interested in exploring. And in addition to that, examining program integrity and monitoring and evaluation of existing potentials for reduction if need be. Cuts to infrastructure, services, and personnel, I would consider not ideal. How could we take a critical lens? Again, surely there's an existing infrastructure for doing this, existing mechanisms, but how could it be done to the greatest degree with the public's involvement, and of course without over-auditing anyone? Those are my thoughts on that question.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have your next question, which is on public safety. So, and we will begin with Bridget for this question. Or, excuse me, with Tanzania. Sorry. That won't be the last time that happens tonight. Even as the city has reimagined public safety and focused resources on de-escalating crisis situations, people in crisis in public spaces continue to challenge the needs of others in the community. How would you balance compassion for a person in crisis with the safety needs of the broader community?
I think Olympia as a city currently has a framework that I'm very proud of. We do utilize, I believe it's called CREW, and it is essentially, if folks aren't familiar, it's a program where officers are working with social workers and peer support professionals to address certain calls that may relate to mental health. I think we're doing that very successfully here. Obviously, anything regarding public safety and law enforcement is not always going to be perfect or look perfect to the public, but if you look at the numbers and you actually talk to people who are running these programs and the officers that are participating, the social workers and peer folks, it is incredible. And I would really encourage people to do that. And I have personally done that, and I am just so very proud of that. And so I think that's already a very successful framework. And that framework includes very basic things. People could be learning off of videos or even simple certifications like de-escalation, social determinants of health focus. So really that public health aspect. Are we providing free and affordable, accessible ways for people to take care of themselves while they are experiencing mental health crisis, or a very popular thing here is houselessness. And mental health first aid also will teach those very basic things. So I would just love to see that grow, to be honest with you. I know, again, that would be a funding thing, but ideally we would want something like CREW to be bigger, right? We would want there to be a group for any officer that's deploying to any situation regarding domestic violence or mental health relation, to have that support to really address those things in an appropriate way. So I'm very proud of the framework that we currently have, and I would love to see it grow.
Sure. Daniel, do you need me to repeat the question? Or are you okay? Okay. All right. Even as the city has reimagined public safety and focused resources on de-escalating crisis situations, people in crisis in public spaces continue to challenge the needs of others in the community. How would you balance compassion for a person in crisis with the safety needs of the broader community?
I agreed with a lot of what Tanzania said, and I also think that we definitely need to focus on de-escalation and, of course, safely intervening in situations. I think a good model of this is the non-emergency line for downtown. I live downtown. There's often a lot of times that me and people in my building have used the non-emergency line. I think it's a great resource. But also I think sometimes it's even just a matter of communication. I live downtown, I proudly rent, I live right behind Olympia Coffee, and we do sometimes get a lot of homeless people passing by our building. Nobody in my building had a list of warm shelters and what their hours were. And so I went to the library, I printed out Safe Oli, I had posted it on their Instagram, so I literally just took a screenshot, put it on a piece of paper. Thurston Health, I put it on the backside, and also I put the non-emergency line at the top. So I think it's often just sometimes just stuff like that. Like, these resources are out there. It's just sometimes that people just don't even know where they are. And so I think, like, even just having something like that, like a handout for people to know of, like, hey, here's where all the shelters are. And you can give that to somebody and they can have it and they can know, hey, Salvation Army is on Plum. You can go there. I think it's like that. I think it's definitely de-escalation, but it's also communication of where those resources are and who to call when you are in crisis.
I think that I will revisit what I brought up earlier with prevention, because I think that that is a compassionate and effective and potentially cost-saving, sometimes underutilized option for us to pursue public safety, with return on investment often being 10 to 1, and considering the roots of a lot of our social challenges being isolation and trauma. I feel like it can lay a foundation that maybe puts us ahead, despite the fact that we have effective and progressive programs, many of which I work adjacent to in terms of the intersection of criminal, legal, and behavioral health programs. Generally no one's fault, but best practices can sort of be behind the curve in terms of their implementation, which is no one's fault, but the diffusion of innovation usually takes a lot of time for the norms, and even folks who are ahead of those norms. That would be, again, something that I would propose more thoroughly we invest in, and also considering that intersecting pieces of that would be economic stability, meeting folks' basic needs, again, creating a sense of belonging in the community, and a sense of wellness as well. Often prevention efforts often aren't very fun. They do not center joy. So I think that that could be a critical concept for us to implement in piloting additional prevention programs to pursue public safety.
My family and I are very active in Olympia. We take transit, we bike on the bike paths, and we use the city parks. We frequent downtown Olympia Library at least once a week, and so unfortunately that means that my children and I have experienced seeing somebody in crisis without getting adequate help. And for me, as a parent, it's teaching my kids compassion and helping them understand what's going on with that individual, and that everybody deserves care and safety and access to health. So I think the CREW program has been great. I have definitely noticed a difference in our downtown, and I live just up the hill, and even in our neighborhoods, since there's been more interventions with people who are in crisis. I would say, as somebody who's a frequent bus rider, that it would be great if there were more resources on the buses, at the transit center, at the library, at some of the parks where people who are in crisis are hanging out, such as Percival Landing Park, Lions Park, Bigelow Park. So if there's ways where, if there are people who are congregating who are in crisis, or if there's that we could have those resources and staff that could be there to help deal with those issues. And I think that everything that we should do should have compassion and empathy, also recognizing that it's an uncomfortable place to be as a member of the public when people are in crisis on the sidewalk, or on the bike path, or at our park, or in the playground. And so I think that making those places safe and welcoming to the broader public will maybe decrease the amount of people having crisis in those places, because there's more kids, there's more families, there's more people there. And so I just think that we need to maybe broaden our efforts and reach beyond just the downtown corridor with some of those resources.
I have the next question, and I believe we're starting with Daniel this time. Do you all have the questions in front of you the same as we do? I thought so. I figured otherwise you had amazing memories. All right. So this question is about economic development and poverty reduction. The city recently approved Olympia Strong, Economic Opportunity for Everyone, which is a plan to address economic resilience in our community. What strategies do you think will reduce poverty and create economic opportunities for everyone, which may be considered in this plan or go beyond? Which stakeholders would you engage in this work?
Yeah. Again, I think that we definitely need to focus on our small business community. I love all of the little like arts walk and all the little fairs that happen in downtown Olympia. I love I can just walk over from my apartment. And I talk to a ton of like local entrepreneurs that want to start businesses. There's people that, sell pastries, or there's a screen printing business, or there's like a little woodworking shop. And I definitely think that those people, encouraging people like that is kind of the key to success. Is these are not gigantic companies. These are people that just are in the community, have an idea, and want to make Olympia a cool place to be. So I think that focusing on the small business community is definitely part of that. And I think that for stakeholders, we definitely need to ask the community. We need to be at these places. We need to be at Arts Walk, at these little fairs downtown, and see what they say, and they will tell us. I also think we have to, of course, ask the downtown businesses, the brick and mortars that are already down there, and of course our local artist community. We have a thriving artist community, and I don't always know if we do a good enough job of including the arts. I think, of course, there are venues for the arts to be included, but I definitely think kind of marrying these two ideas of arts and economics, I think is a really great idea. I was just talking to somebody who is trying to get into the farmers market downtown, and they just were completely lost. This is a business that has been in Olympia for a long time, and they just had no idea kind of how to do it. They're like, there's some jury process, we have to do this, I don't know how to do. I think that definitely focusing on these businesses that are already here and trying to make good on it, trying to make sure that they understand what processes are able to just let them join the farmers market.
I think initially I would defer to some of the details in my previous answers, but I also would add that a living wage is essential. And of course, again, referencing one of my previous answers, that as much economic infrastructure as we can provide without putting too much burden on folks who are already strained would be ideal. In addition to that, I think that revisiting and carefully considering what industries we have and how friendly they are to entry-level workers is a consideration. And therefore, or following from that, potentially creating or expanding existing job training programs, or just integrating that into other services to sort of consider a top-to-bottom approach, incorporating therapeutic elements, including the consideration of dignity and growth and a whole person in how we bring people out of poverty, which of course takes a lot of elements outside of simply financial, economic ones. And in terms of stakeholders to engage, service providers to consider implementing some of these programs were they to manifest, and entry-level industry employers, like I said, and of course, direct engagement with people who are experiencing poverty. I'm assuming that that exists to some degree, but of course, given that it's a priority, rethinking ways that we create policy and implement policy that is informed directly by the people most impacted. So thank you.
So the rents are too high. The mortgages are too high in Olympia. It is unaffordable for the middle class, and I think the major thing we can do to help decrease poverty is by making this city a more welcoming place for people of all incomes. I am a homeowner, and I am shocked when I see rent in my neighborhood double my mortgage. We live on one income, and so we know what it's like for it to be a little bit tight, and I have a lot of compassion for people trying to find housing in our community. It's very hard. So I would say the first thing is to figure out affordable housing, figure out how can we have multi-family housing, something I grew up in, and duplexes and apartments, and I think they're a great place for people to live. I would also say, in addition to bringing down some of our rents and mortgages in our community, we need some more job training, and I would partner with trade schools, professional and trade organizations, the community college. High schools have really interesting programs for their students, and I think that that could be a really great way to get some mentorship programs or other things where people know what are their job options in Olympia so that we can keep them in our great city. I think that local nonprofits could also be a really great partnership here. I know I worked with Cielo, and they do amazing training for English and sewing and all sorts of things. And so if we could partner with some of our nonprofits to provide some of that job training. Also, our Parks and Recreation Department has amazing classes. We could have job training classes as part of those options for people. And those are really affordable, they're accessible, and you don't have to enroll in a school. There is a little bit of less of a barrier for that. Thank you.
So from a logistical point of view, I think it is incredibly important, and one of my colleagues talked about this at length earlier in a different question, was to grow the small businesses and to grow the opportunity for people to successfully have a small business in the Olympia area. And I don't know if this is common knowledge to most people, but Olympia specifically as a standalone city has an incredibly strong economy as a city by itself. We struggle and we feel the pains of funding and tight belts just like any other city. However, we have an incredibly strong economy. And so I think if we were to educate our citizens on that and letting them know what's available to them, there are some very high-paying entry-level industries, not just jobs or onesies and twosies. There are whole industries in the backyard of Olympia. I'm a part of the Leadership Thurston program, and we just recently visited. We went on a field trip, essentially, and I was like, I had no idea this was here. And they're paying like $80,000 out the gate for a young man or woman to start their career with them. And they essentially trained them how to be an engineer at this bottling company that people would have no idea that it's there. So I think that making more opportunity for small businesses, but diversifying our economy by letting people know what is currently available to them, which is quite a bit. And also to let people know that Lacey is the third in Washington state for tech. It is not Seattle, it is Lacey. That is a fact. Do our teenagers know that? Do people going to local colleges know that? I think we could do a better job of letting them know what's right here so that we can make our economy even stronger.
Hold on one second. All right. Starting with you, Zach.
I just started with Zach.
Did you?
Or no, I'm sorry. I started with Daniel.
That's what I thought. That's what I'm
You're right. See?
playing with me.
It was right. I apologize.
Testing to see if I'm paying attention. So this is on balancing personal with council goals. As council members, we each come from individual policy interests. The council also has a significant body of agreed-upon work to advance. Given the constraints of staff time, budget resources, and legal limitations of what local government can actually do, how would you find the balance with achieving your individual goals?
Thank you. First and foremost, I feel that assuming that something larger is demanding the council's time, the city's time to respond to, and that we cannot pursue each of our individual interests given something big happening. I think that preventing harm is good governance. I think that sometimes we don't get what we want because the moment demands that we shift our priorities, and that's something that I am perfectly okay with. Ultimately, my policy interests are built on simply doing the most good for the most people in a tangible, material way. And of course, I can get into the weeds about that per issue, per policy, but that's the core, full stop. So considering financial restraints, considering budget restraints or constraints, considering legal limitations is maybe a little bit of a different consideration, and that there's certainly more than one way to get something done, and one can rely on one's connections and networks to pursue that, and that you shouldn't give up on something that you really want to get done. You know, it might take time. It might take allies and partners that you didn't anticipate working with. Yeah, so I feel that balancing personal and council goals is something that is part of the job. So, thank you.
So what attracted me to this position was the fact that the major priority is the comprehensive plan. It's something that I have deep knowledge of. In graduate school, I was analyzing comprehensive plans on the U.S.-Mexico border, particularly focused on public engagement. So I have urban planning background and community engagement there. So for me, when I looked at this position, I wanted to help finish the comprehensive plan because I think that they're incredibly powerful tools for cities, especially if they can be implemented. That's not always the case. And so I don't have much of an agenda other than helping the council to finish its work that needs to be done this year. And so I would spend my time diving deep into the comprehensive plan and other issues that come up. I know there's lots of things that the city council deals with, such as dealing with the budget is a big one right now. And I have a lot of experience looking into technical documents and policy documents and helping organizations make decisions. And so that's how I see my role if I were to have this position, is to help move the work forward.
So the second part of the question, how would you find the balance with achieving your individual goals? I find that to be a very interesting way to ask that because I'm thinking about several different things, like my individual goals as like the things that I want to specifically get done from a policy point of view if I were to participate with the group, my individual goals as in having a life and having some, outside of the city council and work and things of that nature. director, so I'm not exactly sure, but finding balance within any task, right? Within any challenge is sort of an art, and it really does take practice and it takes patience. I think, like my colleague here, I really am here to serve. Alongside you all, I want to serve my community, I want to serve the city that I live in, and in any way, shape, or form, even the littlest bit, make it better. And so I think with balancing that with my other goals or other things that I'm doing with my family, which is my core, right? My work, which is my passion, being here is a privilege. And so with that in mind, in terms of individuality, I don't view it that way, right? Trying to serve in a very nonpartisan, very community-based mindset while learning and trying to deploy whatever expertise I may have, and then gaining confidence and sitting next to you all, and again, just really from a community-based point or community-based lens, doing the best that we can for this city. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely think that balance is something that is, like Tanzania said, hard to accomplish, but I think it's something I've learned a lot about by being on the Planning Commission over the past year. I think definitely working with my fellow planning commissioners, hearing them out, hearing what they think, hearing what city staff thinks, I think has been a very, very instructive experience. And I think that we've gotten a lot of good work done, and I think that that's how I would set priorities for the upcoming year. Is we know what needs to get done. We know that the comprehensive plan will be voted on and passed. We know that that has to be a priority. We know that the legislative session will bring about a bunch of new bills. They could affect housing, they could affect rent, they could affect a bunch of things. We just know that, so we know that the comprehensive plan is going to come. We know that the legislative session will give us new bills to focus on. And I think that that real balance in setting and working with your fellow people is something that I would hope to do at something like a city staff retreat, and just focus on, well, we know what needs to get done. We know we need to do the legislative session, the comp plan, and also looking at the budget. We know that these are the three biggest things. So I think it's really more a fact of what do we know is going to need to be done in 2025 rather than any sort of personal feelings about it.
So, no? Did that start with me? Okay.
It's happening on both sides. Someone wants a second bite of the apple there. Bridget, this will go to you first. This question's about public engagement. The city values engaging the public on issues to arrive at good policy decisions, and can often receive a broad range of perspectives, some of which are in direct conflict with each other. How would you find your way through the diverse voices and needs in the community to arrive at policy that works for the community as a whole?
Thank you. I'm actually uniquely qualified to answer this question because I am a public participation expert. I've had many trainings from the International Association of Public Participation, including how do you engage with the public and managing outrage and public engagement. My work has always been in community engagement at the state level and when I was in the Peace Corps. So I have over a decade of experience listening to the public and public comments for environmental cleanups and statewide recycling, and at a much smaller level, at a village level in the Peace Corps. And so I've worked with technical staff and decision makers to include the voices of the public. And I've actually been really impressed with the comprehensive plans public engagement process, with the way, the transparency of how they answer questions and summarize the public's comments, and are really thoughtful about how they respond to those. And so we can't please everybody. There are laws and regulations and rules that we must follow as a city, and there's priorities in the city's vision for itself. And so I think when there is dissent and when there are conflicting comments and opinions, there's a way to respond to those in a respectful way while also setting the limits of what we can do as a council and what we can do as a city. I really am passionate about public engagement. It has been my professional passion for my entire adult life. So I think that there's a lot of skills that I bring to that topic.
I think public engagement is incredibly important. I think that a lot of the time to truly build like lasting and foundational trust and rapport with the public, transparency is going to be key. Flexibility is going to be huge because there are so many different voices, right? Just a diversified idea about this, that, and the other. Everybody feels a certain way, everybody votes their certain way, everybody, you know, and we want them to. We want to hear people's opinions, we want to hear people share with us, we want to hear public comment, and I'm not always gonna like those comments, right? And so I think a way to balance that is to sort of go back to that comprehensive plan idea where it's like, what is my role here? My role is to listen. Like, we sit together, right, you know, we would sit together and make decisions based off of the community and the funding and our stakeholders, but at the end of the day, like, we do so much. When people have an opportunity to be heard, I think it's important to just hear them. I don't need to take that personally. I don't need to take that home. And I think something that I would love to see our city do better is to really operate together in a way of common ground based on common sense, right? Like, what is going to be the best thing for everyone overall? We can't please everyone all the time, but we can do everything in our power to like step toward good as a group with our city in mind and with the community in mind, and that is our job, and sometimes that's as good as it's gonna get, and we just hope that our citizens and our constituents will support us through that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for public engagement, I definitely think we just need to focus more on where we all agree than where we disagree. I think we all agree that we should have safe, thriving, healthy neighborhoods. And I think it's definitely something I learned when I was a legislative assistant at the state Senate. I worked for a member who was one of the only Democrats east of the Cascades, and it was something that I learned doing constituent casework, talking to a lot of constituents that did not agree with my boss. But there's a lot that we could agree on, and a lot that my boss and these constituents could agree on. So I'm definitely very familiar with public engagement and finding that agreement that we all have. And I think there is more that we agree on than we disagree on. But I also think it's about making sure that people are included. I think something like renters, renters, I think there's a lot more work being done by the city to include renters. I think that's great. But also just making sure that enough people are at the table. City, state, local, the Port of Olympia. I don't think that any of these, of course there are official jurisdictions, but I think all of these jurisdictions kind of mingle together. And so I think it's making sure that we all are in contact with each other. And then finally communication, making sure that we communicate that out. And I think effective communication, making sure that we share things on social media, on e-newsletters, just making sure that people are aware. Because I don't ever think that people are mad when they hear about something, they're mad when they don't hear about something. It's when they hear something from a friend and they're like, what do you mean the city's doing that? I had no idea. So I think as long as we can communicate early and often, I think that that will mean that we can all find that agreement that we all share.
I'll agree with what folks already said about transparency being extremely important in general and to me, and as well as communication. And I think that that folks are really frustrated for a lot of reasons, and maybe don't always find the best outlet for that. So I think that demonstrations of integrity as a true mechanism of displaying leadership is something that just that people always appreciate. And I think that one demonstration of that is in the plan, teaching the public about city structures and processes is a really significant olive branch, so to speak, in terms of just making sure that we have folks' ability to provide feedback very accessible. So I really appreciated seeing that. I have, personally, I have outreach experience, and I have experience conducting gap analyses and qualitative interviews, and specifically exploring feedback and inclusion in government processes, namely a rollout of opportunities for applying for opioid settlement dollars, and accessing those funds, as well as conducting focus groups. So I would rely on these skills and these experiences to guide me. And in terms of direct conflict, I'm capable of great patience, given my clinical background. But like I said before, people are frustrated for a reason, and I'm frustrated too. And a lot of the reasons for those frustrations are outside of city context, but of course they're bleeding into city context. You know, like I mentioned before, strain and a lack of opportunity and powerlessness and feeling excluded are things that I would keep in mind. But we have to get things done, and we have to not tear each other down, and we can't stop.
All right. Well, take another deep breath. You made it. Are we through our questions?
Closing question.
Yes. So you made it through the round of questions. So this is your opportunity for each of you to ask us if you have any questions for us. So is there anything that you would like to ask us? Yes. Yes. And anything else that you'd like us to know about you and your application for applying for the vacancy? Beginning with.
Can I ask one clarifying question? Is that
Sure.
all, like, do I get one, is there one chance to ask questions and one chance to talk on it, or is it just one?
Yes, it's all one.
All in one?
Yep.
Yeah, so I could just maybe tell a story of why I chose Olympia to be my home. So I got a job with the state, and I came here, and one of the first places I went was Olympia Coffee, right across the street. Great location, love it, still go. And I think that that was really the moment when I thought I could, like, really live in Olympia. And I think I've gotten a lot more involved since I've been here. I got my master's degree from the Evergreen State College. I did my capstone on downtown Olympia. I joined the Planning Commission. I was lucky enough to be entrusted to be in leadership, and I'm the vice chair of the Planning Commission for this new year. And I also recently joined the board of Capital Land Trust, where they conserved over 6,000 acres and 19 miles of shoreline. And so I think I've really tried to not only make Olympia my home, but contribute to the community. But one question I did have for the council is, in getting to know more about Olympia, knowing more about when's the last time that any of you walked downtown, and maybe not just from the car to your destination, but actually, like, walked on an errand. I walked today to the library to print something out, and I think it really changes your perception of walking around downtown, and maybe also then the solutions you think about downtown. So I think that's kind of my final question maybe for the city council, is to be, when's the last time you walked on an errand downtown?
I guess I can answer that question first. Yesterday. So yes, that's a really great question for you to ask of your council. I think that we all know that this is the epicenter of not even just Olympia, but our county. So as the mayor specifically, I actually feel like a sense of obligation to make sure that I'm doing that, even if I don't have an errand. I should just be walking around. So yesterday. Anybody else? Councilmember Vanderpool, followed by Councilmember Gilman.
Sunday, I took bus 12 from my apartment, and I got off at the senior center, the Olympia Center, and I walked over here to pick up my documents. So, yeah.
And on Saturday, I had an event downtown, so I walked down from the west side. I walked through the alleys. That's how I keep kind of a pulse on things, is to see what's going on in the alleys. And then I took a 40-something back up the hill. I didn't walk all the way back. So.
Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
Daniel, I am your neighbor in downtown. I think that I'm not going to give you all my routes. Okay. But I think that what you're asking is important. It essentially is sort of not getting jaded and taking the time to really walk and slow down and look around, right? And thinking about not only like if you are someone that like maybe that's your only means of transportation, and thinking about walkable cities or just at least, close in and dense cities and having your essential needs around you. And so I think that it's what you have is a seemingly simple question, but I think your point is well taken. Thank you.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. Friday, I had a meeting with city manager, and then I went to my office for my day job, which is downtown, so pretty regularly.
And Councilmember Madrone.
Yesterday and frequently.
Yes, it's a really great question, which is a good time for me to say you won't hear necessarily all of us answer your questions that you have, but that was a question I think was really important for you to hear from each of us. All right. Zach.
I don't know that I have any questions. I've been reviewing the plan repeatedly, so I feel like that's a lot of information for me to have taken in. But I do just want to say thank you for your consideration. And regardless of the results of this process, should the council decide that it would like any of my time, I'm very happy to provide it. And I just want people to do well, and I feel like I've got a couple skills under my belt that might be helpful, and I feel like people doing well is really all there is, and that's why I try to stay so busy, and have studied as much as I have, as you might be able to tell, like I'm generally not a public speaker, but I do good work and I think fast, so. And I know that that's a critical component of the job, but I appreciate the time here.
Thank you. This job has a way of making you one. Bridget.
Again, thank you for this opportunity. I love my neighborhood. I'm in the Bigelow Highlands neighborhood, and so we are near downtown, close enough that I can walk and bike down here with my kids, and when it's rainy, we could drive or take the bus. And I think that Olympia has a lot to offer our region and our state for people to live, work, and play here. And I think that the city has come a long way in the 10 years that I've been back, and I am really proud to call Olympia home. I just wanted to say that I have been a public servant for my entire adult life. I am a community volunteer. I'm a Girl Scout leader. I work with youth. I see the city and what we do as a promise to the future for those kids, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity to make this an even greater place for them, to strengthen our schools, to make it easier to walk around for the kiddos, and to have more kid and family-friendly things that are happening downtown and around the city. I think that, yes, the downtown is the core, but there's great places on the west side and east side, and I frequent those a lot with my kids. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Tanzania.
Thank you. So I really wanted to extend a deep reverence of thank you to all of you. It means quite a bit to me to have even been considered for this. I am very honored to be sitting here right now, and whatever happens, it just drives me forward, and it tells me that I'm where I need to be. So thank you so much for the opportunity, truly. I would like to say the last things that I'd like you to know about me is that, and I think I said this in my last answer as well, is that at the end of the day, I am really just an everyday Olympian. I am really just somebody that is living in this city and doing the best they can with their family, and I am a mother, and I'm a partner, I'm a daughter, and I'm a neighbor. And so I would just like you to keep that in mind and consideration. I have tons of certifications and lots of education and lots of networking and lots of connection, but at the end of the day, I think the best way to be able to step up and do this job is to know that you are an Olympian. You're from Olympia, you live here, you love it here, and you want to make it better. And so with that as a catalyst to my question to you all, and whomever answers will answer, but I would like to know, through all of your hard work and through all of the status and the hats that you all wear, what is something that makes you feel like, or that reminds you that you too are an everyday Olympian?
Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
I'm not trying to be funny, but it's when people come and talk crap to me on public comment. I'm sitting on the dais, maybe I have a blazer on that day, and then everyone's called me by a title, and someone comes in and tells me, "You know what's going wrong around here?" So it's moments like that. There's really, really great moments of being on council, and then there's moments that are extremely challenging. There's times where you feel totally misunderstood. You have to make really tough public decisions on things, and you know that you'll have some scrutiny on sort of all sides of it. But I think that's sort of the magic of local government, is that you can't just make a decision and think that you're not going to walk into a grocery store with someone that knew you made that decision. So I get grounded all the time in this work. Thanks for the question.
Councilmember Vanderpool.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes me feel like everyday Olympian is the opportunity to meet with people. In this position, you get emails and phone calls from people that I either love what you're doing, which is not as much as you think, and concerns and issues that they have, or they have an understanding of what we're doing that may not be what we're actually doing. And so there's always opportunities to meet with people. When you get someone to talk to you and you sit down and have coffee and go through everything what we're working on and really work the issue, I value that, really. Just being, and on the local government, that's the one opportunity you don't really get on other levels of government. Sometimes you do, but just being able to be that connected, that rooted in the community, I think that's the most valuable part to me.
It's great, and I'll just take a stab at this because it's a great question. For me, it actually shows up in my frustration, and I'll clarify what I mean by that. So sometimes I think community members forget, to your point, that we're ordinary community members just like them, right? We live here, we're a partner, we're parents, and so on, as you said. And the difference, though, with the positions that we hold is I get to do something about the frustration that I have and the things that I see in the community, and use my position to speak to what I know the community is also concerned about, that I share those concerns. And so that's what distinguishes me, I guess, from another community member in that way, because I have access to the walls of City Hall. But at the end of the day, that sense of frustration is not necessarily that different or distinct from anybody else. I just have the opportunity to do something from this seat. So that's what I would say is really what sort of drives that for me. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, again, thank you all so much. Again, we really appreciate you taking the time to apply. And you are going to be escorted back to the holding room while we interview the second panel that will come in, or the orange panel. And we will call you back shortly. You will have the option to sit in the chambers to watch the voting if you choose to, but you do not have to. It is a public meeting, so you're more than welcome to sit here in chambers and watch that process, or you are free to sit up in the holding room if you prefer not to. That's entirely up to you. But thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Yes, please leave the questions there on the table. Thank you. And actually, why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute recess, just so we can exchange pleasantries and take a restroom break.
Yes.
We'll break for 5. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for being here tonight to interview for the vacancy on our council. And I really just want to express our gratitude on behalf of the council for just being willing to step up in a really tumultuous time to serve your community in this capacity. It's admirable, and we appreciate it. Before we get started, council members, I do just want to make a note that the candidates are not sitting in the order as they are on our list, so make sure you shuffle your papers around. No, that's okay. It's not a big deal. I do just want to take an opportunity to have you introduce yourselves before we jump right into the questions. There is a clock to my right indicating that you have 2 minutes of time for your intro and also for the questions that will follow after your introduction. We also will alternate who answers the question first so that you each have an opportunity to answer each question the first time around. You do have the questions in front of you, so please use that as your reference if you need a little bit more of just a check-in with the question. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and we will explain more about the evening when we wrap up with this segment of the interview process. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started with Jennifer. Please introduce yourself. Yes, please use the mic, push the button there, and there's a red light that indicates that your mic is on, and please turn it off when before the next person speaks. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Riedmeyer, and I applied for this position because of my position within the community. I have worked at Washington State for 7 years, so I'm very familiar with Washington State government. But in addition to that, I'm also a local business owner. I've been a business owner for 6 years. I have a service-based business, and so one of the things that is very eye-opening to me is the impact of our small businesses within the community, not only just brick and mortar, but those who are providing services like landscaping, for example. That is my business. And so thinking, how do we continue to grow given the upcoming changes that are faced with the upcoming budget? Olympia is a state employee community, and so with the proposed cost cuts at the state level, how does that impact, how's those trickles down into the community, and how do we serve individuals? So that is my reasoning why I'm really interested in participating. I've also been a member of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I've sat on that position, on that committee since 2019. And so I've really learned a lot about the city government, updating the Transportation Master Plan, reviewing those documents. So those are the reasons why I feel compelled to get more active within my community. That's all I have.
Good evening. So I'm Kelly Green. By way of introduction, I have lived in this area for about 20 years, moved here with no job, no plan, no real strategy, just moved here on the recommendation of a friend who wouldn't stop talking about Olympia. And in that 20 years, my husband and I have been able to move from renting to owning a home, been able to move from working multiple hourly jobs into more stable careers, adopted some pets, have become parents to a couple of kids, and we've really been able to thrive here. We live up in the Northeast neighborhood. And our kids attend the public schools, which I just love that we have fantastic public schools. Professionally, I've worked at SPSCC for about 12 years at South Puget Sound Community College. I've had the opportunity to move up within that organization, and for most of my time there, I've been able to be part of our executive leadership team, which has given me the opportunity to build some skills that I know will be pertinent to this council. I've worked extensively with complex budgets that involve state funding, federal funding, union contracts, all of the things, even though they've been on a smaller scale than the city. Higher education is a very highly regulated industry, like cities are, so I've been comfortable working in that realm. I've been able to build skills as a strong communicator, particularly around trying to communicate very complex issues to a very wide range of audiences. But most importantly, I've been able to spend my days at that job really focused on our local workforce, working with local students. Our students live and work in this community. They have responsibilities in this community. And so a lot of my work has been really focused on how do we build prosperity here in Olympia. I want to serve with you on this council because of these opportunities I've had here, and I want to make sure that future generations are able to live and thrive here and really create a life the way I have been able to.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Isaac Wagnitz. I am also a longtime Olympia resident. I've lived in our city for over 20 years, including as a renter and now, thankfully, as a homeowner. And I've studied here and worked here for my entire adult life. This is a wonderful community. There's so many things to recommend it as a place to live, the quality of our public services, the natural surroundings, the kind of small business diversity that we have around here. And so I'm really interested in working with all of you to help make sure that this is a place where all of us can continue to live and work in prosperity. So I would really be looking forward to continuing the work that the council has already done on housing security and renter protections, and hopefully forging ahead with more labor and worker protections so that this can remain a vibrant economy for everyone in the years and decades ahead. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I do just want to also remind you with the clock, please make sure that you feel free to finish your sentence if you hear the buzz of the timer. You all are doing great so far, but if you haven't had the opportunity this evening yet to take a deep breath, I suspect you have, just approach this as a conversation between community members. I know there's the formality of the shuffling of the papers and the questions and everything, but this really is just a conversation. So please think of it that way. And we'll begin with our first question with Councilmember Cooper.
Okay, I think this goes to Kelly. The city's success in creating permanent supportive housing and emergency homeless services has relied upon state and federal funds. These funds are not guaranteed for the coming years. How should we continue to serve and provide housing for the most vulnerable?
I'm glad you started with a real easy question. No, thank you for that question. I think the fact that the city has partnered so much with state and federal partners is absolutely the way we've needed to approach this issue. It's a national issue, it's a regional issue, it's a state issue. And I think the city has, out of compassion, and Olympia is an incredibly compassionate city, which is amazing, but I think we've taken on an outsized fiscal responsibility for an issue that is not only local to this city. So for me, I think we have to continue to find ways to partner with state and federal partners, whether that's continuing to advocate, which I know there are aspects of housing on the upcoming legislative agenda for the city, which I think is perfect. I know the city supported the has supported a number of things in the Rights of Way initiative, which have made really big impacts here in the city. So I think continuing to work with multi-jurisdictional partners is really the only way that that the city can continue to care for the folks who are here who are unhoused.
Isaac, yes.
Thank you. I mean, that's a very difficult and a very important question because, I mean, as a city, we have a much less powerful like ability to raise revenue than do, you know, state or federal entities. I'm going to have to agree with Kelly. I think we do need to continue partnering with the state and federal entities to the degree that we can. It's an emotional issue, right? I mean, this is something that impacts so many people so deeply around here. And I think we're going to have to get creative. I'm not going to pretend that I know necessarily what all the answers to that are ahead of time, but I think we need to be willing to look at new solutions that we haven't necessarily explored before. At the same time, I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that in Washington State especially, I mean, a lot of the ability to generate revenue relies on regressive taxes, right? Like property and sales taxes are the most harmful on people who are least able to pay them. And the way our government is set up, a lot of that can't change probably without something at the state level. And so I think a lot of our strategy around this is probably going to have to be trying to influence the state government in some way to be able to have a little more leeway with those kinds of policies.
So housing and homelessness is like everybody said, it is an issue at the national scale, it's an issue at the state scale, and it is impacting here in Olympia. And I do agree, we do need to continue to monopolize any state or local funding that we can secure, but I do think that this is the time we need to be thinking outside the box. We need to understand that our systems thinking is no longer working, and we need to figure out how can we actually do small steps to help streamline individuals to get off the street into temporary housing and into other places. I just read the article on the Olympian about the Sandy Flats, and just talking about the success story of that, the individual that was highlighted, you know, just how they lost housing because of a potential incarceration that was very short-lived, and just that barrier that's creating. And I think if we think about things in a system, and we think how can we address those gaps as we move forward with local policies, this is an opportunity for us to provide pilot programs. You're really working on, you know, streamlining and doing ADUs. You know, how do we get individuals that might have larger properties to get ADUs in there to help individuals that, you know, just need that one step. And so I think that that is a think outside the box approach. As we're facing climate change, as we're facing other natural disasters, we're going to have more people that are not going to have homes, so it's not going to be business as usual. So how do we change that? And I think it just starts with moving beyond our planning, our vision, and really taking and thinking that outside the box. And Olympia has that. That's the great thing about Olympia is we have the ability to think outside the box and to create these different processes. So that's my response.
Okay, and your next question will come from Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen.
All right, so this next one is a budget question. And the question is, the city is going through a challenging budget process while continuing the work of providing the programs and services that the community prioritizes while closing a significant budget gap. Describe how you would approach the budget challenge with consideration to revenues and/or reductions while balancing public expectations. And that question goes to you, Isaac.
Oh, dang. Well, no, I'm sorry. No, I think that, you know, this goes to a lot of the same issues that were discussed previously about housing. I mean, our ability to gain new revenue is currently pretty constrained, and so that is going to require a lot of creative thinking. And I think, however, if we are going to do ourselves any favors, we have to be sure that we're not burdening the people that we're trying to help with the ways that we do that. We're also dealing with the fact that people have rightly, I think, gotten used to a very high standard of public services around here, and I don't think, you know, any major degradation in that is going to go over well politically. And so we do have to be mindful of trying to maintain that level of service without, you know, losing employees, without having to make a lot of drastic budget cuts in really vital areas. Again, though, yeah, I mean, how we raise revenue is I think largely subject to laws that are sometimes outside of our own remit. And so to the power that a local government has of trying to influence higher bodies to enable us to be able to raise more revenue without, harming people who are already marginalized, I think is going to be very important. Again, it's hard to tell the future, like what this might look like, but I am always open to thinking, as the phrase is going to come up a lot tonight, isn't it? Thinking outside the box. And I am a person who's willing to do that. And so I would look forward to sharing ideas, to working with people, to finding solutions to that.
It's me. Okay. So budgeting is something I'm extremely passionate about. I know it sounds boring, but as a small business owner, it is huge. Understanding your source of revenue, where your costs and how you're gonna have your income is the foundation. And your operating budget is very similar. And so, you've already done the budget exercise of thinking like, what costs can you cut in the short term while providing public service or not cutting public service. I think it's continuing to lean into those ideas of, how can we continue to provide X, Y, Z, but it might not be immediate. So that's where you're really planning, you're forecasting, you're really thinking out instead of something happening maybe in a 5-year time frame, maybe it's going to happen in 10 years. So you're still thinking, it's not becoming a lost cause, but you're identifying and prioritizing where your money goes, which is really, really important. Oftentimes, again, it was highlighted that, our sales tax, that's a big source of revenue. But the sales tax is also a big pinch point for individuals. When I submit a bill to a client and they see that sales tax, sometimes there is that cringe mark. So thinking about how are we spending our money, how can we be fiscal, but also mindful with not losing our services. That's all.
I think you all, in the budget that you adopted and worked with City Manager Bernie on, I think took a really big step towards demonstrating some of the challenges that are going to have to come with finding a way to close the budget deficit. I think moving towards priority-based budgeting, being really clear about what the city's priorities are, what the council's priorities are, and budgeting to that is really the only way that you can continue to approach this. The city has done a number of public surveys recently listening to community folks about what's important to them. We have that information, so it's just a matter of lining up. Does the budget line up with where folks are feeling good, where folks are feeling like they're struggling, and then, of course, in consideration of all of the city's obligations, critical services. This is an area where I think my experience would be very helpful. We went through something very similar at the community college. Post-COVID, we had some federal money that we were losing. We had to face the full effect of a few years of an enrollment decline, and things were more expensive. And so we had to approach that, and priority-based budgeting is exactly how we did that. We said, here are our values. This is what we're going to make decisions towards. We're not going to do a 10% across the board. We're not going to do a first in, first out. We've acknowledged what is important to us, and that's how we're going to make decisions. So it's never an area where you're going to make a lot of people happy, and you're actually going to make probably a lot of people unhappy. But looking at the forecast for the coming years that was published in this most recent budget, there's not a lot of other choices than to make some hard decisions.
Thank you. So I have your next question, and we are beginning with Jennifer. And it's on public safety. Even as the city has reimagined public safety and focused on resources on de-escalating crisis situations, people in crisis in public spaces continue to challenge the needs of others in the community. How would you balance compassion for a person in crisis with the safety needs of the broader community?
This question goes back to thinking about the steps that Olympia has taken has been great, is huge. This weekend, I was driving through downtown. I saw an individual handing out hand warmers, handing out hats. You know, it is working. They are working and connecting with individuals. However, we do have situations where we might have individuals that are having a crisis, and it is in a public space, and that does make individuals feel uncomfortable. And I think that this is where it's a step to be like, it is uncomfortable, it is unfortunate, but we also have to think about it as a community. Yes, we do want people to feel safe when they go downtown, when they're walking, they're in these community spaces. Businesses are still being patronized, but we also have individuals that do need that assistance, and that's where it's public safety, it's also public health. It is a nexus, and we need to continue to build those and bridge those gaps, work with the county, work with the state, continue to advocate and think about how can we bridge these issues instead of creating it a us versus them situation. You know, I think sometimes individuals are very defensive or reactive to it because it can be very shocking. But at the same time, it's also thinking, you know, it's humanizing the situation. We're talking about human beings here. We really need to think about that. And the only other thing that I do want to put a nexus to it as you're working through this is really thinking about your city codes, if they do need to come and be revisited, if there are things where certain scenarios of an individual cannot park for a certain amount of time near a park, there might be some safety concerns for residents there. Thinking about how do we need to update and modify these codes to make it a comprehensive situation, not only for those in needs, but for the residents there. That's all I have.
Another really difficult question, so thank you. I think balancing public safety, again, this is a place where residents recently said, you know, public safety is one of their top 3 issues, so everyone's feeling it, everyone's seeing it, the concerns that have been raised, you know, increasingly over the years around experiences downtown. I'll point that out, that everyone has had some kind of experience where they have felt uncomfortable, and the reality is that you know, it's a balance between public safety and people feeling safe, right? Being actually safe and feeling safe are 2 very different things. I think the city has done a tremendous job of standing up some things like the clean team, standing up, I know the ambassadors for a little while, trying some of those programs, and I think that willingness to take risks, that willingness to experiment, to try to find the right balance between compassion and helping folks, business owners, people in the community recognize that they are safe, that the city hears it, that the city sees it, and that the city has both tools and partners who will come to the table and try to find ways to navigate that, I think are going to be really key.
Well, I mean, I'm also going to say it's a complicated issue, right? You know, this stuff has come into my scope personally a little bit somewhat because, you know, I was a member for a few years of the grocery workers union here in the area. And we, you know, throughout, you know, the Olympia, Tacoma area, we had, you know, a lot of stories from our members who were dealing with safety issues in their stores. Because of, you know, related to crime and homelessness, there were situations where our members really didn't feel safe at their work. And we, you know, as a union, we had to take that very seriously. And so, you know, I certainly had, you know, had to think about that one a lot. But by the very virtue of that and thinking about, you know, how widespread the impacts of these things are, I think we really need to be thinking more about being proactive rather than about being reactive, right? I mean, if the root causes of these kinds of problems that are causing crime and that are leading to homelessness and stuff, if we're always reacting downstream, you know, then, you know, no amount of policing or whatever is really going to address it. You know, you'll get one person and then more will come back in their place or whatever. And we've already seen that from how these things have played out. And again, you know, being always cognizant of the fact that as a city, as a small jurisdiction, our resources are often limited. Nonetheless, I think we really need to be thinking about how we can address those root conditions, the housing insecurity, the lack of mental health care, things like that, that then lead to these problems in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Councilmember Gilman.
Kelly, you're going to lead off this one, and it's about economic development and poverty reduction. The city recently approved Olympia Strong Economic Opportunity for Everyone, which is a plan to address economic resilience in our community. What strategies do you think will reduce poverty and create economic opportunities for everyone, which may be considered in this plan or go beyond? Which stakeholders would you engage in this work?
Yeah, ready for this question. Olympia Strong is a great plan. I mean, the folks who put that together, you talked with a lot of folks throughout the community on all sides of this issue. The 4 focus areas are really broad and I think give a really good example of all of the different components that it will take to promote economic development, to reduce poverty in this community. I think when I look at this council's work recently, you've done some fantastic things around a couple of the focus areas. Obviously very active on housing and homelessness, working a lot on some of the aspects of community pride, lovability. I think that's fantastic. I think I could really help drive the focus areas that I just haven't seen as much public work on. That doesn't mean it's not happening, but particularly working with small businesses, looking at business enterprise support, business resources. Those are areas where partnering with folks in the community, like the EDC, with the Olympia Downtown Alliance, with other folks who are working in this realm, I think is going to be really key. I worry a little bit that this coming year we've seen executive leadership changes at the ODA, we've seen executive leadership changes at Experience Olympia and beyond, and the city has lost its own economic development director, which is just going to take a little bit of time to refill and get that person up to speed. So I think it will be really imperative this year for the council to find ways to lead this work, to drive some of these conversations as some of these key economic development partners have a moment to get back to full force.
Well, this might be the one where people who know me are like least surprised by my answers, but I think, you know, if we really want to encourage widespread prosperity in this community, we need to enable people to spend more, and I think that that means we need to look at raising the minimum wage here, and I think we need to look at giving people scheduling security mandated by law. And I know that, you know, there are these concerns raised about how that's going to impact small businesses, but I mean, I got to tell you from my own experiences and that of people that I know, like, we spend money at our local small businesses because we have disposable income. Like, I'm a well-paid union state worker, right? I have money left after I pay the bills, and I go and spend it here in my community. And if people don't have money in their pockets, they're like only going to go to Walmart where the prices are the lowest or whatever. By the same token, if people can't plan their lives, like, how are they going to, you know, go out and have dinner and drinks and stuff like that, you know? So I do think we need to look at that, you know, and this isn't really outside the mainstream, really. I mean, for half of the last century, it was like mainstream capitalist economics to make sure people had money to spend to encourage growth, encourage employment, you know. So I think we need to look at that. I think we need to think about the long term in that sense, that like when regular folk can have a little bit left after the bills, that like that's when economic activity gets generated. So again, you know, I really would look forward to working with folks on making sure we can have a community economy that works for everybody.
Economic development is extremely important for our business community. You know, we look at our infrastructure, our current housing, or not our current housing, our current businesses, and if I'm a business owner, I want to open up a brick and mortar store or business, I have to think about the build out and the cost of that build out and thinking about the loans and those opportunities for me to do that. And often there's a lease of 5 years, if not more. There's the cost of completing that build out. And then there's the cost of me pitching to either the local banks like Olympia Bank is great, or the SBA to secure a loan. And that process takes a lot of legwork. That's a lot to pitch your business plan to do that. So there's a lot of upfront costs that business owners are looking at. And I think it's a barrier in the downtown community. When you're thinking about building out a business, the costs to make it, a place that people want to come and be at, that initial cost, that is significant. And then you're thinking about, I need to provide a living wage to my workers because I want to have great workers. That cost is also something that people need to think about. A lot of people will automatically go to the materials. They are completely fine with paying cost materials, but the cost of labor is a completely different thing, and that has completely changed. It's not only just thinking about individuals having money to be able to spend at the end of the day, but it's also individuals that are on fixed incomes. We do have an aging income here in Olympia, and there is a lot of people that do support local businesses, but they're still very conservative of where they spend their money. So that's where you really have to think about, what is your business? How do you change? How do you present yourself? How do you foster that connection? And I think one of the things is thinking about scale. Sometimes people scale up too much, and that's a barrier.
Please finish your sentence.
Oh, I was just going to add the stakeholder comments. I would work with more of the local Thurston County Economic Development, work with the Small Business Administration, work with local banks, really set up that package and that framework so that individuals have that pathway forward for success.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Councilmember Vanderpool.
And this is for Isaac? Yes. This is on balancing personal and council goals. As council members, we each come with individual policy interests. The council also has a significant body of agreed upon work to advance. Given the constraints of staff time, budget resources, and the legal limitations of what local government can actually do, how would you find the balance with achieving your goals?
That's a good question. I think that, obviously, there's a certain amount of just baseline stuff that's always going to be have to be taken care of. That's true of any job. It's certainly, true of mine. At the same time, that I want to give that all of the due attention that it deserves. I think I would also try to convince other people of the importance of my priorities so they're not just my priorities, right? No one can really achieve anything alone, especially in a context like this. And I think that I'm a good person at finding that balance. So that part I'm actually not too concerned about.
It all goes down to time management. So for me, I do wear my hat as a state employee during the day. I get off work and I am a small business owner in the evenings on the weekends, and that's a balance. I also sit on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I've taken the time to participate, to review plans, and it's just part of business for me. I am a very active person. I pay attention to what's happening in the newspaper, what's going on in different organizations. Any survey you send to me, I will take. I love surveys. I check my email all the time, even my junk email. So I think that, this position really, there are certain limitations. Everything has a framework. You're kind of put in a box. But I think as I, review like the comprehensive plans or learn about local government and participate, just understanding what I can potentially influence and what I can't. And then it's just it's a growing process. This is a new process for me. You were all new council members at one point. So you get to learn your rhythm, how you're gonna manage your workload, and basically how you're gonna serve the community at large.
I think this is an area where all of us do this every day. in some way, right? None of us are just one thing. We don't have one role. We don't have one responsibility. We're always finding ways to find that balance. So I don't think that that piece would be a significant challenge. I think when it comes to balancing something like the work plan, that's a work plan built by 7 people with input from the city. So I think that comes down to, while I would certainly advocate for things that I wanted to see in that work plan, at the end of the day, you walk out of that room with a work plan, that's what it is. And so then I think it becomes the responsibility of remembering that in that scenario, you're putting council first, you're putting those agreements first, and I think that's something that I've had the opportunity to work with some really fantastic colleagues and experience that, where we can disagree, we can have competing priorities, we can have competing interests, and at the end of the day, when we say this is the plan, this is the work that we're going to do, because we know that we can do it, we know that the city can do it, we know that the resources are there behind it. I think that's the key to being able to find that balance, is remembering that there's places where your individual voice should come out and be strong, and there's places where you need to operate as part of a larger body in the interest of the folks around us. I think the only other thing I would say in here is that this would also be a place, I'm a big advocate of, I don't know everything, I don't know how to do everything, and so I think I'm a person who's willing to reach out and ask for help. When I was considering applying for this position, I reached out to every single one of you and your former colleague, Councilmember Parsley, now Representative Parsley, and just asked for time and asked for help, and every single one of you said yes, and I'm so grateful for that. And that kind of leadership tells me that there would be folks there helping to guide that balance, helping to lead by example and show how to do that successfully.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Councilmember Madrone.
All right, and we're starting with Jennifer on this one, I believe. The city values engaging the public on issues to arrive at good policy decisions and can often receive a broad range of perspectives, some which are in direct conflict with each other. How would you find your way through the diverse voices and needs of the community to arrive at policy that works for the community as a whole?
Public engagement is extremely important in any process. You really want to have a comprehensive voice of your community, so that does include both sides of the coin. You have the pros and the cons, and reading through your comments and getting that engagement is really important. But how you go about that engagement is one of the things that I often think about, is going beyond the steps of just having an email, some response to a survey, thinking about having public meetings. You know, the pandemic really changed how we did our public engagement process, but really, how do we go out in the communities and having more of those local meetings occurring at a library, maybe a small business, just getting that feedback. But again, you know, you're on a time frame, and it also depends on the policy at hand. Are you receiving federal funding? Are you receiving state funding? How is this policy being implemented? How is it being, what's the time frame on it? Is it just going to be for 4 years? Is this a pilot project? Are we going beyond that? So I think there's a lot of variables into that, but reaching a diverse group of individuals is really, how do we get those messages out beyond just emails in your standard public meetings? So I worked in a Department of Ecology in the Toxics Cleanup Program, and we spent a lot of time on doing this type of work. One of the things that we did is we created newsletters, and we would mail out newsletters to individuals in these affected areas within a certain radius. So thinking there is a cost associated with that, given the budget limitations, but thinking how can we engage the public in a non-traditional way that's based solely on the internet or computer-based systems. That's it.
So I think this is a place where there's two aspects of it that come to mind for me. One is that the city has that we need to put value in the feedback that is coming in. There are very active advisory committees. There's public engagement happening through the comprehensive plan process, through some of the plans embedded within that plan, right? There's a lot of feedback coming in. And so I think part of it is valuing that, balancing that with the experts, the people who have that expert understanding. But I think the second piece of this is asking where you're not getting feedback, asking what are the voices that are not there, and how do you reach out to them? And Jennifer, I appreciate that you alluded to this. This was our discussion up in the waiting room up there. Was that, it's an equity issue to say who has not been able to engage in this process or who hasn't engaged in this process and why, and to seek out that feedback, because you're always going to get conflicting feedback. Even asking the six of you a question, I could get 6 different opinions on it. So I think taking that in is a huge part of the process, but I think that other piece of seeking it out, finding the folks who aren't able to participate in the processes, aren't able to respond to the emails, aren't able to come to the evening meeting, I think being very intentional about seeking that out is really key to fully utilizing that feedback and incorporating it into the best and most comprehensive policy.
Yeah, I think that public engagement, it really depends on making sure that people who are impacted by a proposal or a policy are able to, give their full input on it. And I think a lot of that just has to do with timing. A lot of folks work jobs where, the usual timing of public meetings isn't going to really work for them. I mean, not even that long ago when I was working at the store, I couldn't have come to this meeting because of when my work schedule had to be. And so I think making sure that we do that. It could even be as simple as just having some, if we're looking at input on some, aspect of the comprehensive plan or something, just having meeting in the morning, meeting at the evening, like staggering the times a little bit to, even having just like a little bit of redundancy to make sure that everybody or as many people as possible have an opportunity to do that. In the grocery union, we had, just member meetings. There'd be one in the morning and one in the evening, for example, and that meant you could get a lot more people in. And also on that point, I mean that, like being a steward and stuff, I think that gave me that experience to actually, navigate a lot of these conflicting viewpoints. I mean, definitely not everybody who I worked with, I agreed with everything about, but in order to do the things that we had to do, I had to look for those common interests and kind of rally people around those and, cut through to what really the goal that we could all unite around was. And so, that's a skill that I actually would really look forward to bringing to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's it for all the questions on the issues, and we'll just move into the closing question. We'll begin with Jennifer. And is there anything else that you would like us to know about your interest in serving? And do you have any questions about process for the appointment?
I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity to sit here. I was, on a whim, saw the advertisement and decided to apply. I was actually inspired by you, Robert, from sitting on the BPAC. I was like, I should do this. Let's see. So I feel very honored to just even sit here and talk to you all. My background is very untraditional. I am not a native Olympian. I moved here in 2013 to attend Evergreen. And I have just stayed here in Washington State, and I really enjoy being part of this community. This community pays my bills to live here, so I feel very connected, and I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. As for process, my understanding is that you're going to be deliberating tonight, and we will be making the decision tonight. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'll explain more towards the end.
Okay.
Yep.
And that is all I have.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I echo Jennifer's gratitude for allowing us to be here tonight, for giving all of your time, and to really working through a thorough process. Another conversation we had upstairs was just how thorough that application was, and really, I think, brought seriousness to what we were about to undertake. So thank you for everything you've done throughout this process. I know what it means to be an effective community partner in the type of work this council needs to undertake. And as part of this council, I know that I would bring a strength of making sure that we have the voices and the partners with our work that we would have. I am a huge proponent of local government. I think it's easy to see what's happening on the national level, federal level, and that is very serious stuff, and I don't question it. But what affects our lives day to day is what happens in this room and what happens in the other council rooms, what happens at those municipal governments. So it's the reason I vote in every election. It's the reason I participate in these types of processes. I think local government is just a huge opportunity to really improve the lives around us. I'm seeking this appointment to work with you on that dais to improve lives and expand opportunities in Olympia. It really just boils down to that. I hope that my application and my time here today has shown you what I would bring to the table, and I hope that I would be a good fit for that position. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge honor to have been invited here for this, so thank you all so much. And sort of like I said when I started, I mean, this town, I couldn't have asked for a better place to live and work and study. This place has so much to recommend it, you know, the quality of our public services, our natural surroundings, our parks, our arts and culture, that we've got such an array of small businesses, and that I'm, you know, proud to say this is a union town, a labor town, solidarity with our transit workers who are bargaining right now, ATU 1765, by the way. And I really, again, I just want to make sure that it stays the wonderful place that I've lived in, you know, and I think that that means building prosperity from the bottom up. I think it means being proactive rather than reactive in the way that we think about a lot of these key issues that are affecting people. And I know not everyone may agree with all of my views all the time, but I think that I bring a good balance of being both a team player and a principled actor to things. I think if you talk with anybody who I've worked with in the past, they can speak to that, and that is really a quality that I would hope to bring to this work and collaborating with all of you to build a bright future for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you. As I said, we really appreciate you taking the time to apply and for your patience tonight. So you are our last panel for this evening, the three of you. So now we will move into the next segment of our special meeting for this evening, which is potentially to go into executive session prior to voting, or we could just move right into voting, just to explain a little bit about process. And you are more than welcome to sit here in the chambers, as this is a public meeting, to watch the voting process take place. But if you prefer to watch in the holding room and not sit here in the chambers as we deliberate and go through the process, you are more than welcome to stay in the holding room as well. After that, there will be a motion to make an appointment once a result is determined. And so we'll let that appointee know next steps once we've made it to that point. But thank you again for your time. Really appreciate you being here. And we'll see you soon. Thank you. All right, and council members. Now that we've completed our interviews, this is an opportunity to decide if we need to go into executive session. I will say, I will personally say that I think it would behoove us to move into executive session at least one time this evening. Do we feel the need to do that now or later, or possibly both? Now is good? Okay, I'm hearing and seeing head nods that we should go into executive session now. So we will do that. We will move into executive session. We'll say for up to 45 minutes. No decisions will be made. I want to make sure we cover our bases. And the purpose of the executive session is to discuss the qualifications of the candidates that just interviewed this evening. So we will recess for an executive session, and we will return here to the council chambers once we've concluded the session for the evening. Yes, room 112. Okay, so welcome back. Again, we just want to express all of our gratitude to all of our candidates who were here this evening. We enjoyed our conversation with each of you. So at this time, I'm going to call back Jack Mongan from the Thurston County Auditor's Office to describe to give us another recap on our ranked choice voting process.
Thank you. So for the next step of the process is we have ballots that I'll be handing out, and on there is listed all 7 candidates who came in to be interviewed. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be marking down your choices from first choice to 7th choice, and you have to mark 1 for each candidate. So you're marking 1 through 7. Once I receive all of the ballots back, I'm going to be using this tabulation sheet. So it has for each voting member, for each candidate, I'm going to fill in all of that position, and then we're going to move on to tabulation. So if one candidate wins a majority, so that's 4 votes for that candidate, for the first choice votes, that candidate wins. If there is no majority vote in the first round, basically what we're going to be doing, the candidate with the fewest votes are going to have their votes redistributed. A council member's vote will be counted for the candidate that they ranked highest, whose votes have not been redistributed. So we're going to continue that processing, redistributing votes until one of the candidates has a clear majority. Now, as occasionally happens, as some of us can remember from last year, ties do happen. In this process, the way it works is after all the candidates have been ranked, there's going to be a tiebreaker ranking. You can see it over here on the right-hand side of the screen. This is the total amount of how you were ranked by the voters. If there is a tie that happens, the candidate that has the highest tiebreaker ranking will be the one that will have their vote redistributed. So through these 2 processes of looking at who has the least votes and redistributing and using the tiebreaker, we'll be able to reach a majority. Before I hand out ballots, is there any questions at all I can answer?
Any questions from council? All right, seeing and hearing none.
Okay.
Please just wait a moment to fill things out because there is a formal process to open voting. All right, does each member have their ballot in front of them? Okay. At this time, I'm going to open voting for the appointment to the Olympia City Council position number 5. Looks like we still have members voting, so it'll just be a few more moments. This is also a good time to double check your ballot. Okay. Councilmember Cooper, have you completed your ballot?
Yes, Mayor Payne.
Mike?
Yes, Mayor Payne.
Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen, have you completed your ballot?
Almost.
Okay, then we wait. That's why we do that. This is the part where you don't envy us because there can only be one, and we have many qualified community members. Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen, have you completed your ballot?
Yes.
Councilmember Gilman, have you completed your ballot?
Yes, I have.
Councilmember Vanderpool, have you completed your ballot?
Yes.
And Councilmember Madrone, have you completed your ballot?
Sure have.
Okay. Thank you very much. So at this time, I am going to close voting on the appointment to the vacant seat for Olympia City Council Position 5. Okay, so I'm going to call each council member up one by one to officially cast their ballot, beginning with Councilmember Cooper. Oh, I voted stickers. That's a nice touch. Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen. Councilmember Gilman. Councilmember Vanderpool. Councilmember Madrone. And for the record, Mayor Payne.
All right, my first step is to do a quick look and make sure everyone filled it out correctly. All right, all ballots have been filled out correctly, so now I'm going to be entering them into the spreadsheet here. So I'll be entering them. Once they're all entered, I'm going to be auditing them again, just going through, making sure I did everything correctly.
Jack, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Will you announce each rank as you annotated?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going
thought
to be
that's
reading
what-
it out loud and filling it out at the same time. So if I do make any mistakes, please let me know.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, so this first ballot is Jim Cooper's ballot. In first place, we have Kelly Green. For second choice, we have Bridget. For third place, we have Tanzania. For fourth place, we have Isaac. For fifth place, we have Daniel. For sixth choice, we have Jennifer. And for seventh choice, we have Zach. Okay, and just to read it back again and double check myself. For first choice, we have Kelly. For second choice, we have Bridget. For third choice, we have Tanzania. For fourth choice, we have Isaac. For fifth choice, we have Daniel. For sixth choice, we have Jennifer. And for seventh choice, we have Zachary.
Thank you. Jack, before you move on, one of our candidates' names is misspelled.
Oh, no.
Tanzania Zenzali's name. There's an S when there should be another Z, I believe. Please correct that. Thank you.
My apologies. Your name is misspelled as well? Oh. R-I-E-D. Wait. Does that look more correct? Okay, my apologies. All right, for this next ballot, we have Ying Huin. For first choice, we have Kelly. For second choice, we have Bridget. For third choice, we have Tanzania. For fourth choice, we have Jennifer. For fifth choice, we have Daniel. For sixth choice, we have Zachary. And for seventh choice, we have Isaac. Just to go through them again, for first choice, we have Kelly. For second choice, we have Bridget. For third choice, we have Tanzania. For fourth choice, we have Jennifer. For fifth choice, we have Daniel. For sixth choice, we have Zachary. And for seventh choice, we have Isaac. All right, Clerk Gilman's ballot. For first choice, we have Zachary. For second choice, we have Kelly. For third choice, we have Tanzania. For fourth choice, we have Isaac. For fifth choice, we have Bridget. For sixth choice, we have Daniel. And for seventh choice, we have Jennifer. So to read through that again, for first choice, we have Zachary. For second choice, we have Kelly. For third choice, we have Tanzania. For fourth choice, we have Isaac. For fifth choice, we have Bridget. For sixth choice, we have Daniel. And for seventh choice, we have Jennifer. Next, we have Robert Vanderpool's ballot. For first choice, we have Bridget. For second choice, we have Kelly. For third choice, we have Jennifer. For fourth choice, we have Isaac. For fifth choice, we have Daniel. For sixth choice, we have Tanzania. And for seventh choice, we have Zachary. So that's first choice, we have Bridget. Second choice, we have Kelly. Third choice, we have Jennifer. Fourth choice, we have Isaac. Fifth choice, we have Daniel. Sixth choice, we have Tanzania. And seventh choice, we have Zachary. Now we have Danny's ballot. First choice, we have Kelly. Second choice, we have Bridget. Third choice, we have Daniel. Fourth choice, we have Tanzania. Fifth choice, we have Jennifer. Sixth choice, we have Zachary. Seventh choice, we have Isaac. So for first choice, we have Kelly. Second choice, we have Bridget. Third choice, we have Daniel. Fourth choice, we have Tanzania. Fifth choice, we have Jennifer. Sixth choice, we have Zachary. And seventh choice, we have Isaac. Dante Payne's ballot. First choice, we have Kelly. In second choice, we have Bridget. In third choice, we have Tanzania. In fourth choice, we have Jennifer. In fifth choice, we have Daniel. In sixth choice, we have Zachary. And in seventh choice, we have Isaac. In first choice, we have Kelly. In second choice, we have Bridget. In third choice, we have Tanzania. In fourth choice, we have Jennifer. In fifth choice, we have Daniel. In sixth choice, we have Zachary. And in seventh choice, we have Isaac. So now that all ballots have been entered and audited, the next step is going to be moving on to the rounds. And in this position, what we're doing is we're going to be looking at all the first place positions and assigning the votes therefore and seeing if any of them are going to be having a majority right off the bat. So for first place, Kelly Green has 4 choices. And Bridget has 1. So because 4 votes are needed to win in the first round of voting, Kelly Green has the majority support. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, that happened much faster than the last time we did this. Congratulations. On that part of it, we officially need to move to appoint you to the seat, so listen out for that in a moment. But right now, I just really want to take the opportunity again to thank every single one of you. There can only be one that is appointed to the seat, and again, not an easy task to have to rank each of you because you all offer something unique and different, both with your lived experience and professional experience of what you bring as a person. So we appreciate that. We hope that you consider serving in another capacity for the city, whether it be on one of our boards or commissions or advisory committees. And I will just make a plug that 2025 is an election year for the Olympia City Council, so I just want to remind you of that as well. With that, I need a motion to appoint Councilmember Cooper.
Mayor Payne, I move to appoint Kelly Green to the Olympia City Council.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion to appoint Kelly Green to the position of Olympia City Council Member, position number 5, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Okay, so at this time, we will make sure, Kelly, that you have your very first business meeting tomorrow. So, yes. So why don't you make sure that after we adjourn that you check in with staff and we will get you all set up for the logistics that will go in tomorrow because you'll be sworn in before we start with our business tomorrow evening as well. So with that, do we have anything for the good of the order before we adjourn? Any comments from the dais? Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. I just want to say and encourage all of you to consider public service. There is no shortage of passion for Olympia in this room. That decision was hard beyond number one and number two for me. It was very, very difficult. And so please get in line, sign up, run, whatever you need to do to keep serving, because you're all meant to be here just because you were willing to put yourselves out there. So please, that's something that we'd all be willing to talk to you about as well. So if you're interested in running for office or trying to get on a committee or running for a different office, let's have those chats, because you're all in the right place. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nguyen, followed by Councilmember Madrone.
You all take the time at the end for your closing statements and shared some gratitude with us, and I hope you feel the gratitude coming from this council as well. What would be the worst is to have too easy of a decision and to question if there was more talent out there. Surely there is in our great city. And also, please do remember that you're leaving tonight one of 7 that was shortlisted out of 22 applicants, and also some pretty competitive applications as well. I mean, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. What a big moment, what a big deal to put yourself out in such a public way. And there's absolutely a space to share your talents with Olympians. So thank you for giving it a go, and I do hope that you'll consider running for an elected position and also applying for an advisory board. You can have both, but there's a lot of ways to share your talents, and I hope you will. Thank you so much for tonight.
Councilmember Madrone, followed by Councilmember Gilman.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and offer some give backs to y'all as well. It's an incredibly vulnerable thing for you all to come in here and participate in a very public process. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I'm just really grateful that you all put yourselves out there. And just offer gratitude to all the people who applied generally, even those who aren't in the room. It's, all of it is a very public process. And I'm just always so it feels very validating to see so many people in the community who want to do this job. And I just want to make myself available to any of you if you want to talk about other ways you can get engaged, whether it's running for office, advisory committee, or anything else that for putting yourself out there. I just see a room of very strong and capable leaders. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Gilman.
Thank you, Mayor Payne. Yes to all of the praise you've offered. Thank you so very much. I'm really energized by the 22 applications and the 22 different people who stepped up, and the 7 of you who had this conversation with us tonight have left me inspired. I've got several new ideas that came up through the conversation that I hope we can continue together. So thank you all so much for coming and participating in the interview. I know it is a scary thing. Actually, 4 of us did that at one point in our history. So thank you all.
Yeah. Councilmember Vanderpool.
Yeah, a lot has already been spoken on this, but I do appreciate everyone coming tonight. I do appreciate all the applications we received. It is not an easy job to come here and sit on the other side of the table and get asked questions that you're not entirely prepared for, and ask in a short period of time and speak on it. And I do appreciate all of you coming out. And like most of us up here have already spoken on, I'm available to speak with if anyone has an interest in office, has an interest in any of our boards and committees, and including ones between us and there are some options out there between us and other boards and outside of the city, and there's stuff that's going on in Thurston County and all these different levels. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to email us. So, thank you.
Thank you. So again, thank you. Get home safe. Congratulations to Kelly Green, who's been selected to serve for Olympia City Council Member position number 5. Again, we do meet tomorrow for our regularly scheduled business meeting at 6 p.m. So with no further business before the Olympia City Council, we're adjourned.